Welcome to Pro Practice, your guide to piano mastery. I'm Josh Wright, and today's tutorial is based on the Mazurka in A minor, Opus 59 No. 1 by Frédéric Chopin. This beautiful Mazurka is the first in a set of 3 in the Opus 59 Mazurkas. I had the privilege of performing this at the National Chopin Competition in 2015, and probably one of the highlights of my entire piano career was winning the Mazurka prize at that competition. More than making it to the finals and being a prize winner there, the Mazurka prize meant so much to me because this really is getting at the roots and the heart of Chopin, in my opinion. We can look at the entire output of Chopin's works, the ballades, the etudes, the concerti, all of these things. And while the ballades are my favorite set of works he ever wrote, the mazurkas are very special, very intimate pieces, and they're extremely difficult pieces to pull off well. Technically, they're nowhere near as difficult as some of the other things Chopin wrote. But to really pull this off takes a certain level of personal touch and conviction. No two mazurkas from two different performers should sound the same. This is a highly subjective matter. Every teacher and every student is going to have their own opinion about how these should be played, and that's the beautiful thing about this. That's not something to be detested. That's something to be embraced, is that everyone will have their own unique take on this. So in today's tutorial, I want this to be a masterclass in shape, balance, so voicing the melody over the accompaniment, rubato, the pushing and pulling of time, and my own personal journey, I'll get into that, of discovering better rubato in this piece. We'll also be going over many basics like some pedaling, which you'll be able to see on the pedal cam, fingering, suggestions, and many other things that will help you in your studies of this piece. But I really want this to take a direction of helping you discover your own ideas. I'll pitch ideas to you, but I want you to take those and really weigh them and say, do I want to do it that way, or is there another way that I want to do it? Getting those wheels turning in your mind is what is going to make you play this piece well. It is not just playing the notes, not playing them in the correct rhythm, not pedaling correctly. Yes, we want those basics, and we'll be going over those, but we also want personal touch. So to start this tutorial, I thought I would play the recording from the National Chopin Competition. 2 things about this recording. I think the guy who was in charge of the live stream may not have pressed it at the right time, maybe due to the fact that I played so soft, because the recording starts at the tail end of that. And then, so out in the universe somewhere, you're going to hear. Now let's press play on the recording. All right, I hope you enjoyed that. As always, there are three things that I hope you got out of listening to one of my live performances. Either that you enjoyed it and you found ideas that you liked, or that you found things that you really didn't like and you want to do differently. That's just as beneficial as finding things that you like. And third, maybe a mixture of both of those. Now, I just realized after I filmed that intro that I didn't tell you the second thing about that recording, and you all heard it. Wasn't a perfect recording. Had a little hesitation in there. And I didn't want to try to use my editing wizardry. I'm not that great of an editor, but I didn't want to try to edit out that mistake to come up with something that was perfect. Just that little hesitation over around bar 74. Okay, so rather than going in there, I went. Okay, the reason I bring that up is to show that I was still successful with these in the competition, even though they weren't absolutely note perfect. There was that tiny hesitation in there. That is the first lesson that I want to go over before we go over any other details. Own your performance. When you are playing this, no matter what happens, and any piece for that matter, make sure that you continue to move on. If I had gone back and corrected it, it would be so obvious and really jarring and very unpleasant to listen to. But just the fact that you keep going, in the moment, things always seem much worse than they actually are. I remember I played Beethoven Choral Fantasy. I even posted it on YouTube. And within like the first page, I had this little slip in my left hand. And I thought, my life's over. I'm quitting piano. This is so stupid. I practiced that part to death. It was perfect before this. Didn't have any of that go wrong in the rehearsal. And then, sure enough, it goes wrong in the performance. And I walked off stage. I was so mad. And my wife said, "That was great. You did so well." And I was like, "That was horrible. Did you hear that little pause at the beginning?" And she's like, "Barely. Yeah, I heard it, but it wasn't a big deal." And I let a couple months pass before I went back and edited the recording and looked at it. I think it was a couple of months at least. And I was like, okay, yeah, that wasn't that big of a deal. So that's just a good lesson. I wanted to use that as an example here in this tutorial. Always keep going no matter what happens in your performance. So just a few quick, I don't want to talk the entire time, I'm going to demonstrate, but a few quick notes about the mazurkas. These are awkward pieces because traditionally mazurkas stress the second beat and sometimes the third beat. So they're emphasizing weak beats of the meter. So you're not going 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Instead, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So that's very important. Chopin wrote these and published them in 1845. So nearing the end of his very short life. So tragic. I would have loved to have seen what Chopin had written had he lived longer. But we also, I think, tragically, and I say this compassionately, I think we got the genius we did because somewhat due to his suffering. Same thing with Beethoven. We can read that Heiligenstadt Testament, and his music transformed due to his trials. So this mazurka, there's Kujawiak, I hope I'm saying that correctly, and then Oberek. Two styles of mazurka. The Kujawiak is the slow and melancholy, and the Oberek is much faster, which we'll see when we cover Opus 59 No. 3. So this is much more in that Kujawiak, slow, melancholic, thoughtful, beautiful style, highly chromatic piece. And let's just talk about the form really quickly. So this is overall an ABA coda form. So we see the A section, obviously, starts the piece in A minor, and then we go to the parallel major over in bar 37. This is our B section, so we're in A major, but this is a highly modulative, I don't know if that's a word, it modulates a lot in here, and then we see the return of the A section in a very interesting key. So we see this meandering passage in bar 77, Now we see the return of A in G sharp minor. Then he repeats this phrase to bring us back to the home key. A7 to D, and then he works his way back over to A minor. Okay, so the return of the A section goes G sharp minor back to A minor. So we have A, the A section in A minor, the B section in A major, and then the return of the A section in G sharp minor modulating back to A minor. And then we have a coda that takes us from bar 114. So this is 113 here. And he could have ended the piece something like that, but instead he goes this surprise here. And then we finally end in A minor. So that gives you a little layout of the piece. Additionally, on top of that, the A section is in a rounded binary form. So we see the first part of the binary for the first 12 measures. So this is the first part of the rounded binary. I'll just play this through so you can hear it. Now we have the second part of the rounded binary. Now the rounding back. So we see that to start the piece, and then we see the rounding back to here. And then he finally cadences over in bar 36 before we see the B section enter. We see something very similar to that in the return of the A. So that gives you a layout. I'm really bad at form and analysis, mostly because I think I'm mentally paralyzed by watching theory teachers argue with each other about forms. I had that happen many times in my past where I would take it to a private teacher and he or she would say, yeah, it's definitely this. And then I would ask for clarification from a theory teacher on some little thing. And they're like, well, this is wrong. That's not right. And I'm like, oh my gosh, if my professors can't decide, how can I decide? But I feel confident in that analysis. I always like to start with form, even if it's not clear. I like to try to dig my way through that. Sometimes I have to ask for help, even at this stage, even after I have a doctorate degree in music, just to clarify, make sure I'm on the right track. Knowing the form is not going to make you play the piece better, but it can help you organize it better to memorize it more effectively, and it can help you make more informed decisions about shaping and creating contrast, which I guess can actually help you play it better. But I just like that for a mental structure, so I hope that helped. Anything else? So these mazurkas were very nationalistic pieces, and Chopin elevated the mazurkas, which were folk dances, peasant dances, and he did that with waltzes and polonaises as well. He elevated those styles to concert pieces like he did with these mazurkas that were, these mazurkas were peasant dances. So these are national dances in Poland. So I heard one time you have to have Polish blood to play mazurkas well. So we're not going to get blood transfusions here. We're just going to do our best right here to show you guys some things that can hopefully help you in your studies. All right, let's start with the fact that the first 12 bars are repeated, so we're going to want to do things differently. Let's talk about touch first of all. Try not, this is going to sound weird, but try not to think of the piano as an inanimate object that you are manipulating. Try to think of it as an extension of yourself. So when you play this, it's not, I'm pushing a wooden block down, and then sound comes out because a hammer smacks a couple strings. That's very mechanical thinking. Almost think of, I like to think of this little front part of the key here I like to almost think of it like a glove, and I'm slipping my hand into those keys so I can feel the piano. So the reason I say that is this is so different versus... You can see that second one is so much more tender and thoughtful. So feel free to use the pad of your fingers. Using the pad of your fingers can inhibit speed in really fast passages, which is why I generally like to be fairly curved in really fast virtuosic passages. This is not fast and virtuosic at all. So I would probably, depending on your piano and your space, remember, like a lot of teachers are allergic to using una corda pedal, which is the dumbest thing ever, because if you have a really bright piano, you may need to use it just to calm things down a bit. It also helps bring color. So I'll use my una corda pedal and then try to play just slightly brighter in the melody. That will allow the accompaniment to just be so much more whisper soft. So I'm going to do that. You'll see a heavy amount of una corda pedal. Now, if you have a really dull piano or a very dead room and you're not projecting at all, don't use the una corda pedal. But I just wanted to clarify in case you're watching that. So here we go. Okay, so already let's think about what we could do with that shape. The first time through, maybe start with a little more presence. So it dies to there. And this is such a strange way to start a piece in A minor. I mean, it's not unheard of. Composers do start on the dominant. But this, we really don't even know this is the dominant. Because it's like mixture, E7, A minor, then we hear an E major chord, and then we hear the 7th chord. So it's like, okay, we're in A minor. But it's pretty ambiguous. So as the performer, try to enhance that ambiguity as you play. So start a little more on the E, and then come down. So inhale, exhale, and then just so soft on that. And then a breath of fresh air, crescendo. So we went to here, and then stay big, and then come back down. So if we're down here, we will then crescendo, stay big, then get softer. Okay, now let's do the opposite this next time. I always say in these tutorials, you don't have to do everything the opposite on a repeat, but in this, it's pretty close to the exact opposite. So here we go. So we're gonna start whisper soft, and then open up. Diminuendo is like what could have been, rather than the first time where we really drove to that. Diminuendo. Okay, so if we're really soft there, we will do the same thing as we did before, crescendo. And then here, a little bit more soft and sotto voce. So under voice, very soft. And then if you want to, you could be a little more and then less, or you could just stay soft. Okay, that gives you a really nice landscape of how to shape those first two lines. Now let's talk about rubato.